Money FM 89.3, the best of Saturday mornings. Wide World on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome back to the show. We are talking about a new National Library Board exhibition called Untold Stories, Four Singapore Artists' Quest for Inspiration in Bali in 1952. This is featuring a collection of works inspired by a field trip to Bali and Java by four Singaporean artists in 1952. They were Liu Kang, Chen Chong-sui, Chong Su-ping, and Chen Wen-shi. In the studio right now to talk to us about it, the co-curator and daughter-in-law of Liu Kang, Gretchen Liu, and also Nadia Ramli, the senior librarian for outreach at the National Library Board. Ladies, welcome to the studio. Great to have you with us today.
Well, great to be here.
This is so interesting. And first of all, maybe Gretchen, give us an overview of how this project came about.
All right. Well, Liu Kang passed away, my father-in-law passed away in 2004, and so the family home continued to be lived in by my sister-in-law, and in about 2016, she told me that she would like to move out, and Liu Kang had this rather large study-cum-studio up on the upper level of the house, and the issue was what to do with all the things that had been sort of packed away and kept.
Yeah.
And so when my sister-in-law told me this, I said, well, look, I'll help you. So we had to, we eventually decided to donate to the National Library because there were so many books. But he also had, photographs, ephemera, letters, and the library has, very good capacity to sort of organize and catalog all of this. And when we finally did the project, it was they packed up over 50 boxes of things, some 7,000 items.
Whoa.
Right. He was a pack rat, my father-in-law.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, at the time we were deciding what to do, I went upstairs in the study and I was like opening cupboards, and because I hadn't been there and I hadn't kind of investigated. So I opened this cupboard, thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to find here? I saw this old Bata shoebox that was quite fragile. There were Chinese characters on it that said Bali Dao. And when I opened it, there were all these little envelopes, and there were a whole set of original negatives, from a Rolleiflex camera.
Now, for the young kids, explain what a negative is.
Oh, okay. Yes, now we're all digital. Well, in the old days, you put film in a camera, and then you had to snap away.
Oh,
yeah.
What is this thing of which you speak?
Yeah. So the thing is that Liu Kang he bought the camera the day before he left on the trip in July.
Nadia's laughing because she has no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah. It was a Rolleiflex camera, and the negatives are 6 by 6 centimeters,
wow.
and so I opened an envelope, and I saw, oh my gosh, these are photos of Bali. But I put everything away for a couple of years, and it was only during COVID, when I was home all the time, that I took them out, and I realized that he took over 1,000 photos during the 7-week trip.
Oh my gosh.
And the thing is that everybody who writes about Singapore art history, they always write about the exhibition that was held in 1953, the following year, but no one knew anything about the trip itself, where they went, who they met, what happened to them. And so it's been a process of recreating that journey through the photographs, but also through some other sources that we found in Liu Kang's.
Wonderful. So Nadia,
Yeah.
let's bring you into the conversation. Give context for our listeners. Who these four artists were and why this trip was so significant.
Okay, so the four artists, I think as mentioned earlier, we have Liu Kang, Chen Chong-si, Chen Wen-si, and Chong Su-ping. They were our pioneering artists. And, the work that they did, and the, as Gretchen mentioned, they had a 1953 exhibition. It's always been, seen or regarded as a milestone in Singapore's art history. So those are your four artists.
In what way? Was it the kind of work they did, the style?
Yeah, so looking in terms of the subject matter, so I think the focus of Southeast Asia, and then we were looking in terms also of incorporating sort of Western and Chinese style painting as well in their works.
What did they do while they were there on this trip, Nadia?
Okay.
Or Gretchen as well. Yeah.
Well, they
actually... Why was it so important?
Well, throughout history, artists have traveled for inspiration.
Yeah.
I mean, so that and these 4 artists had some things in common. They had all gone to art school in Shanghai, so they'd experienced a similar kind of education just when China was, coming out of the imperial system and, kind of adapting to new education methods, even in art education.
Before the Cultural Revolution.
No, this was
along.
in the 1920s and 30s when they were young and students.
Got it.
So in Western art, the two principles are life drawing and kind of outdoor sketching or outdoor drawing from life. These are the fundamentals in Western art. So this generation of artists were the first generation to kind of be trained in this way. So the idea of going on a trip, and seeking inspiration was something that they were very familiar with, but then their lives were so disrupted. They were each had their own journey to Singapore story to tell, but there was the Great Depression, then there was World War II, and then there was whatever else. So the 4 kind of found themselves in Singapore, and because they had the shared art education, it sort of drew them together. But in 1952, there was the emergency in Malaya. So you couldn't really go north very easily on a sketching trip, and so they decided Indonesia was a newly independent country since 1949. So they decided and Bali was already known as sort of being an inspirational place for artists. So most people have thought that they just went to Bali, but in fact they arrived in Jakarta. The trip was very last minute, we know now, and they were relying on people to guide them and help them. And so there was a great deal of spontaneity about the trip and kind of last minute decisions, and they were just very lucky, because I think the biggest surprise was how fortunate they were, because every place they went, they had people who kind of helped them, guided them, gave advice. And so in Bali, for example, they were able to arrange to have sort of artist residencies where they could go to one place for a week and then actually draw from life. And this is all hitherto unknown.
This is like the ultimate guy's road trip, the art version.
This is a Netflix movie,
right?
4 pioneering artists on the road. I mean, did they have a good time? Did Liu Kang ever talk about it to you or to the family, what they got up to, what they did?
Well, unfortunately, no. Because I think he forgot about the photographs.
Right.
But he did talk about it all the artists subsequently talked about the trip in their oral history. But we had also found a diary that he kept for the first half of the trip.
Any juicy bits in there?
Well, he was very frank. Now that remains with the family. But yes, I mean, there's some really super amusing stories. They had to share hotel rooms. There were some issues with food, good and bad, interesting. And then also in the letters that they wrote home, Liu Kang and also the other artist Chen Chong-sui, he wrote letters home. And so you've got some amusing anecdotes, like how there was one night just before they were crossing the Bali Strait in a tiny boat where they had to kind of sleep on a single bed. And then my father-in-law wrote this this sort of, 2 men sleeping in a bed, kind of separated under their blankets and each having their own dream. So yeah, I mean, there were a lot of a lot of interesting little details that we could then add to this bigger tale of the quest for art inspiration.
Awesome. We're talking with Gretchen Liu, the co-curator and daughter-in-law of artist Liu Kang, and Natalie Romley, the senior librarian at the National Library Board, talking about this new exhibition in Singapore, Untold Stories, 4 Singapore Artists' Quests for Inspiration in Bali in 1952. Nadia, what surprised you as you were putting this together, working with Gretchen? There's a lot of information on a lot of artifacts to deal with. How did you decide what was going to be important to show everybody?
I think we worked very closely together with Gretchen in terms of the type of material. So we do have a selection of the over 1,000 photographs taken. And we've also sort of included some of the other rare archival materials that are in our collection to sort of put together and piece together this story of this 7-week journey the artist did. And then we also have 31 paintings
as well.
Yeah, some of them were actually part of the 1953 exhibition. So, that first captivated audiences back then. So we do have a selection of that, for visitors to come and see. And all of these materials, I think, we're hoping to invite people to sort of reflect as well on how the 4 artists with their adventurous spirit, they really and their creativity, their quest for creativity really is quite, reminiscent of the bold spirit that we have for, Singapore's arts and culture today.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Have I seen some of these paintings in the National Gallery
Yes.
in years past?
Yeah.
Because that rings a bell, right?
Yes,
The
yes,
Bali
yes.
series
That's what I was going
of
to
drawings
say,
and
yeah.
paintings. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were quite famous for revolutionizing the way that Singapore art was perceived. Have I got that correct? I remember going to the National Gallery. Before that, there were very colonial interpretations of this part of the world. But this was one of the few times, at least out of my memory, where we started to see local painters painting local regional scenes. Is that fair?
I kind of would put a slightly different spin on it.
Sure.
Because Singapore had an active kind of Chinese art community from the mid-1930s.
Yes.
But you couldn't make a living as an artist in Singapore. So you taught art in the Chinese schools.
Not unlike now.
Yeah. So the
In
thing,
some ways.
Well, but see, so it was very hard for them to be considered as sort of like artists first. So it was really, the exhibition was transformational. And because I think it really gave them the confidence to pursue art at a different level. That they made the trip, they produced this art, and it was so well received, and it created quite a buzz. And so people, I think there was a kind of the trip and the exhibition gave them a sense of affirmation,
Right.
because they went on to paint prolifically and have various exhibitions.
And were successful in their lifetime.
Yeah, all four of them. I mean, they're the leaders. They're of their generation. They're considered pioneering artists.
Absolutely. And so take us into this exhibition. So when we walk in, family goes in there. What are we going to see? What's it going to look like?
All right. So there are 3 sections.
This is at the National Library.
Yes. So this exhibition that we're talking about, the Untold Stories, is at the National Library building, level 10. And the exhibition is split into 3 sections or 3 chapters, if you will. So the first chapter is really about imagining Bali. So what could have our artists encountered before they even sort of embarked on their trip? And then we have then Experiencing Bali, where, visitors get to immerse themselves in all the photographs that we've been talking about,
Nice.
as well as our rare materials and the letters as well. You get a sneak peek of that. And then lastly, we have the Bali Legacy, where we look at then the artworks that were created, coming out of that trip. Yeah.
What's the most surprising thing, Gretchen? Maybe I'll ask you this first, and then Nadia, you can also tell us. Aside from the 1,000 photographs that you found, what insights did you gain from this that perhaps you didn't know about your father-in-law or these artists, or what was surprising to you?
Well, I think first of all that. I realized that very early on in their lives, they kind of created this bond, because each of them had their own story, as I said, tell how they came to Singapore and everything. So I realized that there was kind of this quite deep connection for the 4 of them, and they remained lifelong friends. And then secondly, how they were sort of relying on some old friends who had lived in Singapore before the war to kind of guide them when they landed in Jakarta. And these 2 people failed to appear. And so they were sort of left bereft at the airport. Somebody on the airplane, a businessman, took them to a hotel, fed them dinner, and then, and loaned them Indonesian currency. So this whole notion of the kindness of strangers and how people, how they, everywhere they went, they connected with, say, the Chinese community. They might be Klansmen, relatives, fellow artists. And so there's this whole dimension of the people that they met on the trip and how they interacted with those people and what those people enabled them to do. Because I think without those human connections, the trip would not have been so successful. So it's really what I call, the kindness of strangers. And that includes, as I said, in Java, members of the, Chinese communities there, but also in Bali, they connected with the kind of the ruling family of Ubud, with the Belgian painter Lemaitre and his Balinese wife Ni Polak, and they were and other people in Balinese who kind of assisted them in their quest for artistic inspiration. So to me, that was I think the biggest surprise and the most exciting things to share. And by the way, there's also a book that was published which tells it's the same story in a slightly different way called Bali 1952 Through the Lens of Liu Kang. So that is co-published by the National Library.
Yeah. And Nadia, what was surprising for you? You come to this with a very different lens than Gretchen, obviously.
So as a librarian, I love like looking at archival material. So I know you've mentioned not to talk about the photographs, but really the photographs were what, meant it. You see all these paintings you mentioned, you go to National Gallery. I've always wondered who were the people behind it, right? So having to see the photographs of the people who, did the scenarios or the models, putting a face to these, people were really, really fascinating for me. And, with the research that Gretchen did, having names to some of these people or to, to identify, paintings that have been untitled, perhaps, those were really, really very interesting for me. And
I think it's fabulous. You get to see the genesis of their artworks.
Yes,
Who inspired
exactly.
them?
Yeah,
What locations inspired them? I think it's magnificent.
Kind of like that Beatles documentary.
In a way,
They show the
you're
making
seeing the invention of the moment.
yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Gretchen, bringing it back to you. So you encountered this fantastic treasure trove for the nation, but it's also a treasure trove for your family.
Yes.
Did it change or alter your perception or view of your father-in-law in any way?
Well, the thing is, I already had done some projects in China. My father-in-law was in China and in France as a young man, and he had studied art in Shanghai and taught. So I had done some projects related to his photography. He was an avid photographer from the age of 15. So I was, so I knew that aspect of him. I think I could kind of sense the frustration that him and the fellow artists must have felt, as they're now middle-aged men, and they're school teachers, and so I could just I could imagine the boost to their confidence that they received. And the funny, I was just telling Nadia outside that I had a walkthrough when the exhibition was up, and everything was ready, and got called in a few days early to walk through. And I entered the room, and I actually got teary. And I could just imagine Liu Kang looking down and saying, that's good. Because the library did a fantastic job telling the story and making all the information available to the public in such a beautiful way, really beautiful way. People should go and have a look how beautiful they've done
I've got
it.
to say how you talk about touching the public. Got to get this comment in from Athanasios. Listen to this. I had the pleasure, says Athanasios, of meeting and watching Liu Kang paint a portrait of a colleague once. Was working for his son, Liu Ka-tek.
Yes, that's my husband's brother.
Right, Liu Ka-tek in the mid-90s, and he came to the office in Duxton Hill one afternoon. A great experience in my life.
Oh, how fun is that? Yeah.
Athanasios listening in from Australia.
Wow, wow. That is so sweet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's
Thanks,
going to have a big
Athanasios.
impact on the public. So where should they go to see it?
Yes.
When's it on for?
So the exhibition runs till 3rd August at the National Library Building, level 10. We also have a satellite exhibition on the ground floor. But if you can't make it or if it's too far, we do have some roving exhibitions. So it is currently at Tampines Regional Library. So for your East Siders, please visit there. It's there till April. And then we will be moving that roving exhibition to Jurong Regional Library and Woodlands Regional Library as well.
So you just get on the NLB website. It
Yes.
tells when it's going to be where.
Correct. Yeah. Just head on to the exhibition's website. We have programs, monthly tours to really deepen the experience for you guys.
Otherwise, the National Library in Bugis, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Nadia Ramli, the Senior Librarian of the National Library Board, and Gretchen Liu, co-curator of this exhibit, Untold Stories, 4 Singapore Artists' Quest for Inspiration in Bali 1952. Thank you both for being with us today.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.